There's a story that I remember reading a while ago, and it's about a man that goes to visit a Zen monk. And he's quite a wealthy man, he's a successful businessman. He goes to visit this Zen monk, and he asks the monk if he will teach him the ways of Zen. So he's quite stern and, in a way commanding this Zen monk. So the Zen monk says, okay, let's sit down and discuss this over a pot of tea. So the man sits down. The Zen monk then puts this tea into the pot. And once the tea is ready, he proceeds to pour the tea into the man's cup. And he continues to pour. The tea fills the cup, fills it to the brim. Then it starts to spill over the brim of the cup. The man continues to watch this as he carries on pouring the tea. And he pours and pours and pours until the tea starts to spill over the edge of the table, all over the man's clothes and onto the floor. So the man screams out, "Stop, what do you think you're doing? You're spilling the tea all over the place. Can't you see the cup's full?" And the monk says, "This cup is like your mind, full of ideas, full of beliefs, full of knowledge. Empty your cup and then come back and I will show you Zen." I think this is like, it represents a fundamental thing that we must learn, that we must see for ourselves, is the conditioned mind is this overflowing cup. We have this idea in our minds about who we are. We have this image, this idea and these beliefs in our mind about who we are, about life as a whole. And what many people speak of, when I've spoken to people in the past and so on, and this was also my path, we speak about being conditioned, but then it's like we embrace certain parts of the conditioning and then try to discard the rest. So on this spiritual path, then what we begin to do is we start to pick and choose bits and pieces that resonate with the beliefs that we still are holding on to. So this might be your gender, it might be your race, it might be your color, or anything that's related to the person that you think you are. You hold on to this information and then you gather anything that resonates with that. And this is what you structure your spiritual identity around. So when I speak about ego, ego is this identity. It's this identity that we are holding on to. And through this identity, we gather the things that resonate with us the most. We kind of are drawn to certain people because of the things that they might say. But then at the same time, we kind of dismiss certain things that they say because we don't understand or because they don't resonate. So it's almost like these bits don't matter. This sort of sentiment is also echoed in the Bible, in the story of Jesus. And I'm not speaking about the Bible, the story of Jesus here. It's like a reference. I regard the Bible as a book that in many ways can guide us towards the fundamental truth that we all hold within ourselves. And Jesus speaking in parables was the purpose of his parables was so that his words could only be really understood by those who had kind of arrived at this point of emptying their cup. So many of the things that he said made absolutely no sense to the full-minded person, but then to some people, his words would have resonated quite deeply because of the profound meaning behind his words. There was something that I was I would say, drawn towards early on in my kind of journey. And, I'll give you the brief sort of story. I was sat on my own at home one day, and I was contemplating. I've done a lot of contemplating, a lot of meditation, a lot of time on my own. I kind of withdrew myself as much as I possibly could, albeit while still trying to maintain my everyday life. So I spent a lot of time on my own. And in one of these moments on my own, in the quietude and, in the silence, I wasn't reading anything. I was just sat in silence, as I still do quite a lot now. And I heard the words 16:9, as clear as day, as clear as you can hear me speaking now. These words came to me. Now, the kind of bizarre thing about what I heard was these words it was like my own voice speaking. Okay. Now, I haven't made any assumptions. I haven't made any identifications or beliefs or anything. I'm just explaining to you as it was for me, but I'm not trying to say it was anything in particular, just words. I'm not trying to say who said it or where the words came from or anything like that. Just the fact that as I heard it, this voice sounded like my own, but it wasn't me speaking, and it was in the room with me. These words came to me, and it simply said 16:9. So after I'd sort of thought, wondered where these words come from. How could I was on my own. It sounded like me, but then I was just drawn to what these words were trying to share with me. And the only thing that I could come to was perhaps it's a Bible chapter and verse. So I scanned through the Bible to see if chapter 16, verse 9 in any of the books in the Bible were kind of, resonated. And I came up to John, the Gospel of St. John, chapter 16, verse 9, which simply says, "Of sin, for they do not believe in me." Now, on the surface, this simply, the simplest interpretation of this is, it's a sin to not believe in Jesus. And obviously, to get some context, I read the whole of the gospel. This is like a dialogue that Jesus is having with his disciples in, if I remember rightly, around the Last Supper. And so I read the whole gospel, and Jesus is speaking about God and how God will show people what it is that they don't understand, or something like this. So, of sin, for they do not believe in me. So basically, God will show you what sin is, for they do not believe in me. So, like I said, on the surface, this simply sounds like, if you don't believe in Jesus, that's a sin. So I started to look at this a lot, kind of more deeply. And what I started to see is this, and many people are probably going to kind of question this or deny this, refute this or whatever. But belief is the sin. What's regarded as a sin is what goes against God. Okay? It goes against God. And what I see now, and I know I've said in the past, in fact, a post that I put up very recently, the devil's greatest trick was convincing the world there was a God. And I chose the word, and how I worded it, there was a God. I didn't say there was God. So this is something for you to contemplate. So the sin is what goes against God. Now, if you believe something, let's take God out of the equation for a moment. when you believe something, if somebody says something to you, you either believe them or you disbelieve. If you don't believe somebody, then basically you are assuming that this person's a liar, okay? So this, in effect, is like a judgment. So if you believe somebody, then it's a judgment, in the same way that if you disbelieve somebody, okay, it's just one is more favored than the other. So to see belief as a sin is simply like saying you are opting for your idea of what God is, as opposed to seeking God for yourself, which is basically finding out the truth for yourself. So if you only believe, then you structure your whole life around this belief without actually knowing. And this means that everything that you are kind of creating for yourself might actually be against God. Now, like I said, I'm not a believer in God. I don't profess to believe in God or anything. I accept everything about this whole idea and story of God, and everybody's entitled to follow their own path, whichever path suits you. But this is how I see the whole process of belief. If you settle for a belief without seeking for yourself, then you are highly likely that you are missing a fundamental piece of truth, the most important piece of truth. And then you will structure your life and everything around this belief. You will then seek everything that supports your belief, as opposed to seeking the truth for yourself. So this is effectively is like the consequence of the conditioned mind. The conditioned mind believes fundamentally, this is me. This is me. I am not anything else that society has told me that I am, but I am this person. This person is me. So what can I add to this to make the me that I think I am kind of more valuable in the eyes of society, in my own eyes, and blah, 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 blah. And this is the kind of the path that we follow. We start to add all kinds of things to us. The whole idea of spirituality is, again, it becomes an identity. The whole idea of being a soul, for example, or being consciousness, and all of these ideas, oneness, and so many different ideas that we throw around without actually seeking the truth for ourselves. So words like oneness, words like a soul inside a body, words like consciousness, and so on, all of these kind of words, we hear these words and we choose to believe them without actually seeking the deeper meaning for ourselves. Like, is there something deeper than just hearing the words and keeping them in our minds? Or is that all that's necessary, just to believe what we hear? Now, when I look at this even deeper, or look at this closer still, a word, or any word, in fact, it is words that condition our minds. Words that condition our minds. And because it's words that condition our minds, when we do hear words like consciousness and a soul inside a body and so on, it means that it's like that's where we stop. We don't go any further. Even words like meditation, for example, it's more likely that we are just going to find the simplest explanation that makes our attempt or approach to meditation more viable, as opposed to finding the true meaning of what it is to be meditative and going with that. So we start to construct our own idea, and we go with that idea, as opposed to seeking out what the original kind of source of the idea is and going with that. So all of these are just conceptual ideas. If I say I am or we are consciousness, if I say we are souls inside human bodies, if I say anything, pertaining to spirituality, you must not believe a word that I say. I don't say anything that is for you to believe. Everything that I say in my posts, in my videos, all the things that I'm speaking about right now is nothing that you should believe. You shouldn't believe a single word of it, not a single word. But take these words and see the direction that they point. See if you can follow this path and find the understanding, the realization for yourself. There's a book that I have, and it's called Zen Buddhism, Reflections for Everyday Zen Buddhist Quotes and Stories and Anecdotes and stuff like this. And there was something that I read in it. I've had this book for close to 15 years or so. I've not read it for ages, but there was something that I read. It's like a story or something for every day of the year. So it's like 365 stories, quotes, or whatever. And there was one that I read that really, it was like the revelation. It said, Buddhism is like a boat to take you across a river. When you get to the other side, the boat becomes useless. Now, when I first read this, I was really starting to rely on Zen Buddhism. I was like really starting to understand it. I was grasping a lot of what I was reading and so on. Some of it didn't really make any sense, but nevertheless, I was leaning on Zen, or on this book at least. And then I read this and it kind of threw me into disarray. But then there was a sort of, almost immediately, there was a realization that came to me that Zen Buddhism effectively is just a collection of words. It's just a collection of words. Some people or somebody or whatever has compiled these words for people to follow. So in many ways, it's no different to the Bible or any other religious book. It's no different to any other sort of philosophy or principle or whatever. They're just collections of words. But it's what the words point to that matters most of all. And this is what we must pursue. But instead, as I said before, through our conditioning, we learn to just embrace the words and accept the words as truth without pursuing the true meaning for ourselves, within ourselves. And that is the kind of key line that you will find in any of these philosophies, religions, or approaches, is that the truth is within you. It's within you that you must seek for your fundamental truth, or for the fundamental truth within yourself. This is why there is the greatest importance to know yourself, because once you know yourself, then you can put yourself aside. And once you've put yourself aside, this is effectively the unlearning and the emptying of the cup, the freeing of your mind that enables you to see more clearly and deeply the direction that every word that you read, it doesn't matter whether it's in the Bible, whether it's Zen, whether it's Veda, whether it's Hinduism, whether it's any religion whatsoever, you will realize then the direction in which they point, and they will bring to you the clarity that is needed on your spiritual path.